This is part 4 of a series on the 2017 UK general election, which will give a brief overview on the issues surrounding political reform in the United Kingdom and follow up with the policies proposed by each party. This election, all parties are proposing some significant changes to the way the UK political system works, so regardless of which party or coalition of parties forms the next government, some combination of voting reform and constitutional reform are on the ballot. The last general election was unusual in that multiple third parties ran popular national campaigns, and first-past-the-post voting systems do not cope well under such circumstances. In England and Wales, 1/4 of the electorate voted for a third party and received just 2% of the seats in the House of Commons, with the most popular party taking 57% of the available seats with 1/3 of the vote. In Scotland, half of the electorate voted for a party other than the SNP and received just 5% of the seats in the House of Commons, with the most popular party taking 95% of the available seats with the other half of the vote. The Scottish Parliament, founded in 1999, already uses a system of proportional representation when electing MSPs, which is why, despite results like this in the UK's general election, Scottish elections produce results like this from the same electorate, leading many parties to seek an end to first-past-the-post in favour of a system of proportional representation being implemented nationwide. The sum of laws and court judgments, sometimes referred to as the Constitution of the UK, are also facing major changes. As explained in Part 2, leaving the European Union presents an unprecedented opportunity for an unnerving amount of UK law to be rewritten with little or no oversight, and whoever holds the pen will wield an astonishing amount of power. Scotland also continues to seek its independence, which would, of course, break up the UK, and the debate over voting reform has renewed discussion over the future of the House of Lords, which remains unelected and, as some argue, unaccountable for its actions. So how do the parties compare in their policies on political reform? The Conservatives do not oppose a second Scottish independence referendum, instead stipulating that it must take place after the Brexit process and only with public consent. They would repeal the Fixed-Term Parliaments Act, allowing the ruling party to once again call snap elections without a vote in Parliament, keep the House of Lords unchanged, citing its constitutionality, reduce the number of MPs to 600 through a 2018 boundary review, and continue to deregulate through the red tape challenge and the one-in, two-out rule. They will keep the first-past-the-post voting system, extending it to mayoral and police and crime commissioner elections, and keep the voting age at 18. The Green Party is split on Scottish independence, with the Scottish Green Party supporting a second referendum and the other Green parties opposing it. They would give Parliament a vote on any new trade deals, replace the House of Lords with an elected second chamber, and allow the electorate to use referendums to make local decisions like recall their MP. They would introduce proportional representation for all elections and lower the voting age to 16. Labour opposes the second independence referendum, calling it unwanted and unnecessary. They would establish a constitutional convention to examine and advise on reforming Britain's constitution, reform the House of Lords to make it smaller and democratically elected, and though it's absent from their 2017 manifesto, the Labour Party was resolved to include reforming first-past-the-post with proportional representation in their 2020 manifesto, prior to a snap election being called. They would also reduce the voting age to 16 for all elections. The Liberal Democrats oppose a second independence referendum. Instead, they propose home rule for each nation within a federal United Kingdom. They would devolve more powers to each nation, reform the House of Lords with a democratic mandate, and enable all UK citizens living abroad to participate in UK referendums and vote for MPs in separate overseas constituencies. They would also reform local and general elections in England by switching to the single transferable vote and changing the voting age to 16 for all elections and referendums across the UK. Plaid Cymru, despite themselves being an independence party, do not address a second independence referendum for Scotland. They would create a Welsh legal system, publish a human rights charter for Wales, provide an incentive for students to live and work in Wales after graduation, and grant 16 to 17-year-olds the right to vote. The Scottish National Party would hold a second independence referendum at the end of the Brexit process, stating that it's the right of the Scottish Parliament to hold another referendum if independence gains majority support in Scotland, or if a material change is made to the circumstances of the UK, like being taken out of the EU. They would also support allowing EU citizens resident in the UK to vote in general elections, vote for the abolition of the House of Lords, replace the first-past-the-post electoral system with proportional representation, and introduce proposals to extend voting to 16 and 17-year-olds in all UK elections. The UK Independence Party wish to save the Union, but do not address a second independence referendum for Scotland. They would introduce an English Parliament, abolish the House of Lords, and halve the House of Commons to 325 MPs. They would also hold public referendums every 2 years on the issues gaining the highest numbers of signatures on approved petitions, and introduce a system of proportional representation, but keep the voting age at 18. Thank you to the following patrons who supported this video. If you'd like to contribute, please check out the link and consider donating $1 or more toward the production of future content. The next video in this series will take a look at each party's policies on the environment, energy and climate change.